I mean, I worked.
I was right, I had.
Well, the IT folks here worked for at least an hour and a half for me, trying to figure out how to save my notes. And I got into the meeting, they were there.
Welcome to the August 27, 2018 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. First item on the agenda is roll call. Tim Gilbert, Chair, is present. Sydney Bremer, Vice Chair.
Present?
Alder Veronica Corpus Dax.
Present.
Lisa Hanson.
Present.
Jacob Miller.
Present.
Randall Petrowski.
Present.
And Jerry Wisniewski.
Present.
Thank you. Next item, approval of the agenda for the August 27, 2018 meeting.
Move to approve? Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next item, approval of minutes of the August 13th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes to open as are approved. Next item, regular business, item 1. Consideration with possible action on a request to amend the Larson Green Planned Unit Development to the Rail Yard Development, 600 blocks of North Broadway, submitted by the Community and Economic Development Department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, it is described as the 600 blocks of North Broadway, but as you can see, outlined in red, and I actually have to give a little correction. It also includes this 520 North Broadway, old Larson Canning office building as well. So the boundary is not reflecting that, however. So it's a much larger area. The reason for the request, this is to amend the existing planned unit development that falls over this site and additional area. But it's basically to provide land use regulations and some design guidelines, primarily architectural design guidelines, that are both flexible, but that assure that improvements to this area meet the character of the development, it's consistent with the character that's happening to the south, that is consistent with the sort of vision and goal that the owners and the cities have for the property, and also that it is pedestrian scale and urban rather than a suburban style, which is, I think you all know, you've seen this multiple times, sort of the concept. So where you're looking at just to the south of the screen is Dousman, obviously the Fox River. This is Titletown Brewing Company and Restaurant, and the sort of this area has been all developed into sort of a mixed-use commercial area. Broadway runs north and south, and yep, NEW Shelter and Mather Street on the north. Okay, this is the comprehensive plan. You can see our comprehensive plan land use designations designate the entire property as downtown. So downtown in the comprehensive plan is defined as promoting high-intensity office, retail, housing, entertainment, and public uses, preferably in a mixed-use environment. Additionally, in this area, the Authenticity Plan that was adopted recently designates the site as a catalyst site. They call it the Larson Green Catalyst Site, and they find it appropriate for multifamily, townhouses, commercial, and mixed-use development. This is the zoning map, and this is going to look kind of strange to you because you're going to see all that gray on there, and that striped gray with the black stripes in them is a light industrial zoning district. So you can see that the whole area, the base zoning is light industrial to the south. It's a downtown 2 district, which is sort of our Broadway side of our downtown zoning. And then as you go west, it kind of goes into a office residential and then into a lower density residential area. But what's important to look at when you look at this map are these dark black lines that kind of go around the whole area. So in 2008, the city, working with the then owners, which was On Broadway Inc., developed a planned unit development for the whole 21-acre site running from Dousman up to Mather, basically, and the railroad tracks to Broadway. There were a lot of specifics put in there as far as what people wanted to see designed. There were small lots for townhouses shown, and some other rather detailed items that were put into that planned unit development. In 2013, the property was bought from on Broadway by DDL Holdings. They're the current owners of the property. And in 2013, they came through this plan commission, the city council, and amended the planned unit development primarily for these bottom 4 to 5 acres. And obviously, you see the development that's happened after that. So the tap room and the brewery, the bottling plant, some of the office buildings down to the south have been redeveloped, restaurants and commercial space. And so that kind of all happened in 2013, so about 5 years ago. And so that's kind of the history of what's out there. On the north side of Kellogg Street Extended is sort of where the focus is now. So the developer's been focusing on that very much, obviously. The city's been focusing on that a lot. And it is 17 acres of the 21-acre site. Currently, there are plans in with the city being reviewed to extend, maybe I can go to a different map here, might be a little bit easier to see. All right, to extend Bond Street to the east, to connect with Donald Driver Way, which would extend up from Kellogg to the north, and then Kellogg Street extending east into the site as well. So there are plans currently for that being reviewed by the Department of Public Works and our engineering department. There's also plans for a very large regional stormwater detention facility that would take the stormwater for all of the other development that would eventually happen, could eventually happen within the whole site, which kind of frees up each individual site to be able to use more of the space when you have a cooperative regional pond. I'll just stick with this. So we've been working cooperatively, city staff's been working cooperatively with the owners and also the owner's consultants. So we've been working with a planning consultant, an engineering consultant, and 2 individual architectural consultants on how we can create land use regulations on this area that are flexible and allow for creative architecture and site design while still staying true to the vision for the entire area, which again is a pedestrian-friendly, very urban environment. So over the last 6 months, a little bit more than 6 months, all those parties I just mentioned have been hashing out a new planned unit development amendment, and that's what you received in your packet. It is very, very lengthy, and I'm just going to hit some of the highlights here, then answer any of your questions you have with it. Now, none of this is in direct response to a development proposal. However, I will mention, again, that the roadways are in for review. There's probably on the northeast corner of Kellogg and Donald Driver, there'll be a townhome development that'll be coming probably public shortly. And then also we know the property on the north side of Bond Street, which is called Development Area B up there, has received some federal funding for residential development. So, and also I would mention that this building, which is the 520 building, the Larson Green building, is being cleared out, demoed. There's tenants going to be moving in there soon. Other areas will be what they call white box, so it'll be built out, ready to be filled. So you're starting to see the development pressure kind of hit this area, which is why we felt it's so important to get this planned development in place, not just from our standpoint from city to protect the integrity of the site itself and its relationship to the Broadway district, but also for the developers so they can go out and market the available sites and say, hey, here's the guidelines you need to follow. So again, kind of breaks it into 3 discernible areas: development area A, B, and C. Now, A is the area that's kind of surrounded by Driver, Kellogg, Bond, and Broadway. That is going to be the most intense and core section of the planned development. They're all a mixed-use development. They're all going to allow downtown uses, which fall in our downtown zoning. However, in that area, it's going to be a little bit more intense. The other areas, B and C, are going to have a little bit less controls, or excuse me, a little bit more controls, as they're deemed to be a little bit less intensive use, if that makes sense to you. So the text is also broken into sections, and this, in your plan unit development, these are all the major sections. So land use, site plan approval, dimensional and area, stormwater, signage, refuse, parking, lighting. The big one is architecture and access and circulation. And I'll just kind of go through some of these really quick. So land use, everything falls back on that base downtown zoning. So the base downtown zoning allows a lot of mixed uses, and it is our most robust and open zoning district. The PUD is augmented a little bit. It does add a few additional regulations as far as use goes. So it better defines some of them, like temporary parking. In the previous plan development, that was not defined. It didn't have a time frame associated with it. You know anything about that, temporary often becomes permanent. So this PUD puts a time frame on it, a 5-year time frame with an annual, after that an annual review and approval by the city. It puts capacity caps on some of the large assembly uses like schools and that type of thing. You can exceed those caps with council approval. And it adds limitations on accessory and auxiliary buildings, which we don't want smaller buildings that are accessory to start dominating a site and actually would hinder future development from coming. The dimensional regulations, and you can see those are sort of the standards you see in every zoning, lot width, setbacks, heights. Those are specific to each one of the development areas as well. And again, they're designed to create the greatest density in development area A. So some of the big features in that is a 60 to 80% of the structure's front facade has to have a 0 setback. And it's kind of explained out, it's detailed in there. It's 80%, an additional 20 could be hardscape, activated hardscape area, like an outdoor dining area or art piece or something like that. But the goal there, again, is to pull those buildings up to the street and make that urban environment. Also, in that same vein, parking is required to be pulled back at least 80 feet to allow that front 80 feet to become building pad area. Surface parking is sort of a trouble that comes with development. So the first part of the development puts in massive amounts of parking, and then you don't have any other buildable site left. And also, when you're marketing that, it's a little bit difficult when it's all parking lot. It's like, well, you can develop over here. So that is being pulled back. But in development area A, we would allow 100% impervious surface, so full coverage of the lot, being urban once again. And I'm going to go back a little bit, but B and C, which are supposedly a little less urban, those have a little bit more restrictive dimensional regulations, so the heights are a little bit smaller, setbacks might be a little bit higher, are a little bit larger, and it does require green space. Stormwater management is primarily going to be up in this corner. Again, I said it's regional, so it's going to take in everything for this whole 17 acres. But it does have two components. So the first component is that it obviously has to function properly. So Public Works and other regulatory agencies are going to have to approve that. The second function that's in the PUD, however, is that it be designed as not only a functional utility, but also as a site amenity. And that is not super detailed in here, but it would include items such as public walks or benches, gazebos, maybe interpretive signage, what is stormwater, what is the rail yard, what was Fort Howard, so on and so forth, to kind of make that a feature and not just a utility. Signage pretty much follows the entire zoning code, however, no pole signs are going to be allowed out here. So 6-foot-high monument signs would be permitted at your entrances, but no pole signs, mainly wall signs. There's a couple strange provisions in here, not strange, but they're unique to this area. One, because it's kind of being developed as a large campus site, that we are going to allow signage, may not be on the exact parcel of the business, but that can direct you to it at any of the major driveway entrances or the intersections, if they so choose to put those up. As obviously you're going to have multi-tenants in a lot of these different buildings. And also the use of, and I'm going to use quotes, the rail yard or the rail yard innovation district. That phrase itself, whether it's incorporated in a fence or it's put on a structure, going over a walkway or something, won't count towards their sign capacity. Again, they're trying to make a unique brand for this area as part of the Greater Broadway District, and so we're going to try to encourage that. Parking shows one of the largest changes. So all the minimum parking requirements for commercial uses have been removed. In that way, we're basically going to let the market dictate how many stalls are required for a non-residential use. Our code right now, the PUD, drops it down to half of what would normally be required by the zoning code because it's in the downtown district, but this would remove those. It would not remove it for residential, however. Residential would still be required to have a stall per unit, but what it does do is it untethers it from the parcel that that building is on. So an example would be, let's say you have an apartment building in development area B, but the parking is actually in development area A. Those would be okay to count towards each other. Again, very urban type of situation, not uncommon in places like Chicago or Milwaukee. You may have to walk a block to get to your parking. And that's the same thing we would permit here. Now we would permit it, how they develop it is going to be up to a developer, and the market would kind of dictate that. We did throw in one thing also that's unique here, and we're requiring bicycle parking. So it'd be one bicycle parking stall for every, I believe it's 10 stalls, permanent stalls in a parking lot. Again, I won't say it again, but very urban. And then some of the other things like development area A has a maximum area for surface parking can be no greater than 50% of the whole site. Again, trying to limit that parking for several reasons. You know, sea of asphalt generally isn't really inviting. The tax base that's generated from a sea of asphalt is very, very minimal compared to a 3 or 4 or 5 story building, which could easily go up there. Oh, I'm going to go forward and kind of go to architecture. Architecture is sort of the meat of this code because there aren't any direct developments that came through, although we did work with the developers and their architects. We're not reviewing anything directly, so we can't just refer to this code and say, look at Exhibit B, this is what the buildings are going to look like. And frankly, we get in trouble doing that a lot of times because Exhibit B changes, then they have to come back and amend it constantly. So we just put some very basic specs as architectural regulations, and those are definitely in there to maintain the aesthetics, but also the function, and also the value of not just the buildings in the PUD area, but the buildings all around. We want them to be compatible, support pedestrian-oriented living, and sort of have that urban feel. So some of the big things that you'll see is applicability, exceptions, and appeals. So any existing building on the site, and there's just the one, has the option to be able to redevelop and match the character and the materials of the building it's either being added on to or being redeveloped as. Any new buildings would have to follow the full new code. And one thing I want to point out is this exceptions and appeals because it's going to directly affect you if it goes through this way. Later we're going to get into the exterior building materials and some of all these other architectural regulations. The safety valve on that, just like a Board of Appeals with the zoning code, is you can apply for an exception to the design standards. The design standard exceptions would go first to the Director of Community Development, and if it meets the purpose of the architectural section, you would have the ability to allow substitute materials of the same quality, innovative architecture, that kind of thing. If he denies it, the appeal then could come to the Plan Commission. And so a petitioner could request the Planning Commission to say, hey, I want to use corrugated sheet metal on my building, and this is why. And if it's innovative and it works and it fits in with the theme, that's a safety valve. Orientations, all the buildings are going to have to be fronted onto the street that they front on. If they front on Elmore Commons, which runs down the center, and I guess I should mention that, this would be a pedestrian walkway that actually cuts through the building and would continue down, go over Driver Way, and continue down to this multi-use trail. With the eventual goal, Kellogg Street crossing the tracks. So what was I at here? Orientation. So all the buildings would have to face either the commons or the streets which they front. So no sides facing the street, no backs of buildings facing the street. You have to connect with your community, and that's what we're going for here. To that same end, no mechanical equipment's allowed to be on the front of the building. Dumpsters can't be in the front. Parking can't be between the building and the street. It's got to be in the side or in the back. And so that's pretty important. Again, as we had mentioned before, trying to get that connection with the greater community. Each front facade that faces the street is going to have a minimum amount of open space or window or door space. It changes drastically in the PUD based on, if it's residential versus commercial. I believe commercial is 50%, residential is 20%. So you don't have any blank walls facing the street. Majority of the exterior of the buildings are going to have to be brick, glass, or stone. And that includes the veneers and, of course, windows. That would be the primary material, so 70% of that building has to have that material. 30% could be a secondary material. That secondary material could be Dryvit or stucco, decorative block, architectural metals. There's a plethora of material out there, but sort of the standard and the long-term healthy materials are generally your bricks and your stones. And then there's a list of prohibited material, and those prohibited materials are going to include things like non-decorative block, corrugated sheet metal, wood siding, that kind of stuff. Those are prohibited. However, there is the ability to use those as an accent feature, up to 15%. There's a lot of businesses that will use a corrugated metal as an overhang, let's say. It looks attractive and it looks nice. We don't want that as a primary material. So that's a big thing with the materials. Again, any of those materials can be asked for an exception or get an appeal. Facades have to be articulated, so no blank walls greater than 40 feet. There's got to be a window, a roof line change, a recess or a jut out or something every 40 feet, so you just don't end up with a blank wall, a big long blank wall. And as I had mentioned before, we limit the any appurtenances that are on the outside. So any mechanical equipment, that kind of stuff has to be screened or be on the sides or the back. And the last thing that the PD talks about is access and circulation. I mentioned where the streets are going to be coming before, and so those are pretty important. Now, the one thing you're going to notice when I show sort of what we use to guide our PD is this center area is generally going to be a parking lot or possibly a couple of ramps. And Elmore Commons is a pedestrian way, so no vehicle traffic on the Commons. But the traffic's going to have to cross the Commons to get from one side to the other. So we put an exception in here that one crossing is permitted across the Commons, but it has to be heavily differentiated and geared towards the pedestrian, not the car, including things like a speed table potentially, or a roll-up curb, different colors, different materials. There was even a concept that was really interesting, was to put a railroad crossing there, being you're in the rail yard, which I thought would be really cool. So anyway, that crossing for Elmore Commons is the one exception, but for vehicle access, obviously Bond, Driver, Kellogg Streets are all vehicle ways. They're going to be public rights of way. Pedestrian traffic, the blue line is going to be a trail system that'll run along the tracks, kind of next to the townhouses, and then connect back up into Bond Street. I just mentioned Elmore Commons, which will be a large, more formal pedestrian way that can also be used for events, event space. But the other thing, all building entrances need to connect to the walkways, to the sidewalks in the street, and the multi-use trail, so you don't have to walk through full lengths of parking lot to get to the front of a building, or you don't have any access to the doorway, except maybe going through grass or whatnot. So that's an important comment, that's or part of the PUD. And what I wanted to show you next, so this is the concept drawing that started the base of the PUD. It's an older drawing of the rail yard, but as I had mentioned before, this would probably be, on this drawing, it's probably going to be some multifamily or larger scale buildings. And again, the funding for these have actually been approved, so that's great. These would be townhouse developments, kind of coming off of common courtyards, but again, you can see them fronting the walkways and the commons. And then again, this primary area would be a buildup of larger buildings with just access points in to the central parking area. So you'd get that urban street facade that's along Driver, Kellogg, and Bond. Again, and you can see the detention facility there. Again, this is not a set in stone. This is the concept that we base these regulations on. The regulations are supposed to be flexible, so you can come in and you got some room to play, move your Legos around. But this is kind of what we based the PUD on, and more detailed plans from the architects and engineers as well. We are confident that the PUD is going to provide guidelines that's going to work for the owners for marketing. and not having people come in that have ideas that just don't match with the concept. And also that they're built flexible enough that you're not going to see them coming back here every 6 months when they're doing one building because it doesn't match. Frankly, if they come back constantly and say it doesn't match, maybe staff has to recommend against changing it based on every development. But anyway, so the alderman for the area was informed, Alderman Scannell. On Broadway Inc. was informed as well, and we notified property owners in greater than 400 feet around the rail yard area, this north 17 acres of the rail yard area. We received several calls, most of them just wondering what was going on. Of course, everybody thinks the new building's going up right away, even though there's potential for 2, and we got one being renovated right now, so it is happening. There was some concern expressed that parking, especially on event days, gets tough down there, and we should have parking regulations and should remove those. So I do want to share that with you. We did not receive, even with that comment, there was not an objection to the planned development. Most of the comments were that they like the idea of having some architectural standards and controls, and that this is arguably one of the biggest gems of the city and needs to be protected with regulations. So with that, we are recommending approval, subject to the PUD. Sorry. And I'm here to answer any questions, I think. John is here to answer any questions as well.
Yes, Commissioner Byrne.
Could I follow up on what you just said about parking?
Sure.
What does it mean to say that we will allow the market to determine the parking?
Yeah, generally, there is a regulatory side to parking, so one stall for every 300 square feet of commercial space, let's say.
Right.
Sometimes the market is a much different market. So they be marketing for an office building, they know they don't need that much
Oh,
parking,
okay.
so they put in less. Or they know they need a lot more, and they put in more. So it's just
So this is
taking
pre-construction.
pre-construction.
That was
Correct.
the important point.
It
I was
is,
trying to-
yep. And oftentimes they're white box buildings, so they don't know what use is going in there.
And is there, I did not notice any encouragement in the PUD for parking structures rather than surface parking.
Well, there's encouragement in the form that we only allow so much surface parking, and that the setbacks are really high. So parking structures, as you know, are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Generally, they get mixed in with a building that's built. So you'll have a couple floors of parking, or like the Children's Museum where the parking's up above. And that is permitted and it is encouraged in that.
You're welcome. Any further discussion?
I guess I would just love to say that this was the site that got me involved in being involved in the city of Green Bay, because prior to this, I was not involved at all. But August of 2013, when my middle child was 6 months old, I started attending all the planning commission meetings, all the RDA meetings, all the city council meetings, and I am just so excited by this site. And you guys have done so much incredible work in figuring out exactly how this is going to work. I'm so excited about it. We own a house, and we lived there for 5 years on Kellogg, 3 blocks away from this, and I just really wish we still lived there. But it was only 1 bedroom, and there's 5 of us, so it's not going to happen. But just really excellent job, and I'm really excited about this site.
Thank you. Commissioner Byrne.
I want to second Lisa's excitement about this. I think particularly in that architectural section that you said was the real meat of the whole thing. It's extremely thorough. There's a lot of variety built in. There's a lot of flexibility built in, such as the marketplace parking, but in the architectural section too. I have only one question there, and it has partly to do with that area about existing buildings and the exceptions and appeals. Wouldn't it be appropriate to include some reference to the Landmark Commission there? You have it basically under the purview of the Director of Planning, and I would assume to some extent this committee, as you suggested before, this commission. But That seems like it really just begs for landmark commission.
Sure. And the only reason that, and that is a good point, the reason that it's not in here is there's only one existing building on the site.
Right.
So that building, you know, if there was an appeal or an exception being requested, you know, we'd go to Stephanie, who's the staff person for landmarks, possibly bring it to landmarks. Their recommendation would end up in a staff report for the plan commission or go directly to the director. But we didn't want to have an entity go to multiple stops. I mean, you could change it for the exceptions or appeals to go, rather than the plan commission, to the it's not landmarks commission, I believe it is. And that would be fine. Generally, the expertise of the plan commission, you've seen the site a million times, maybe not a million, a lot of times. You've worked with it a lot, you're sort of the authorities on it. But no, landmarks, that would work as well. They have great architectural, or will have great architectural background as well. But again, this isn't meant to recreate a historic area.
But that one building is.
The one building is, yes.
Okay, and that's what the exceptions and appeals refers to, isn't it? I guess not.
Well,
No,
it's
it's
under.
general architectural design standards. I guess I'm thinking more of the existing building.
That falls under
Okay.
the applicability,
Mhm.
right? So for
I
the existing
understand.
building, if you're changing it around, match what's there. Don't, and also, we do specifically state in here that we would rather see repair rather than replacement.
Yes, good.
But-
And what, by the case, is rail yard / innovation district?
That is one thing the developers have been, I think, marketing the site as an innovation district.
Which
I think it
means?
has a lot to do with the type of business that's going in there.
Okay.
So, you know, like I think it's T3 right now is a sort of innovative office space where you can rent your
Oh,
space, and then there's
okay.
communal,
Yes.
communal areas that you all share. So it's the term they're using for it.
And
innovation
it
district.
might actually involve, I take it from the way it's presented, some kind of variation on the basic rail yard logo?
Right, it's the R with the tracks around it.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I
thank
just
you.
want to incorporate that in multiple areas of the site.
Another one of those very specific things that's covered here. I really congratulate the staff on a good job.
Thank you.
And the representative of the developer is here as well.
And
Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this matter? The chair
To
will-
open the floor.
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to open the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Sir, if you'd like to come up and state your name and address for the record, please?
I'm Peter Liebergen, I live in Seymour, but I own this property here, this corner. I'm curious as to this piece of property being left out of this plan. Maybe you can answer me that.
Sure. That property just to the east of where Development Area B is not in control of the development of the owners.
Yeah, I realize it's a different owner, but what is that zoned at? I mean, are you going to zone it in?
I believe that is zoned industrial right now. Zone, general industrial. I think it has a general industrial use to it as well.
And how does that tie in with putting housing in here then?
Well, the housing is gonna all front bond, so it's gonna be the rear yards. And as it sits right now, again, we don't have a development plan, but I don't believe there's access going up to Mather.
It shows on the map here that there's a
Yeah, currently there's a
like a trail or
paved
something
area.
for the
Yeah.
sons. And that was, the other thing I was wondering is, you have the main street going and making bond into a main street, whereas Mather sort of is Main Street. I was wondering what the rationale was for not using Mather as your main line.
Up to come back up through up to McDonald and Mather? From
Yeah,
Donald Driver?
Donald Driver Way.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. There's an ATC power line that runs through there for one, and what you can put underneath it is limited. But in that development area B, there's going to be a lot of internal drive aisles and parking areas. And to put a roadway through that's not going to carry much traffic was felt to be kind of a poor use for valuable tax space.
Keep in mind these questions, I'm not trying to throw
Yeah, sure.
negativity towards this, I'm wondering why the reason for it. I mean, obviously, it enhances my property having bond there, but I'm not here to self-serve myself. I'm scared of this being industrial and this being homes and what the backs are to it. I know the line plant sometimes runs late at night, and there's some noise and light. And then the trains come through. Is there any plan for an overhead walkway to get to the park?
There's not plans for an overhead walkway, but the goal, long-term goal is to get a railroad crossing at Kellogg Street. It's easier said than done. Railroads don't like to get crossings.
Yeah. Well, it's a liability every time you go along this.
So that would be the goal, so Kellogg would go straight into Light Park, the Light Park's parking lot.
Okay. Well, the other question I have is, and I wasn't here for your whole presentation, maybe I'm asking the question, is everything is there going to be parking on this?
Yes, both sides.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak on this matter? Yes.
John Leroy with Mount Associates. I'll keep it brief here, just to touch on a few questions. First, to note to the staff that's here, this has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of hard work put into it. It is very much appreciated. Just want to note that for everybody. And it's been a goal here for 10 years. This has evolved from Larson Green to taking many cues from the authenticity plan to getting cracked at this with Mao about 2 years ago at this point, and then in the past 6 months to really putting some teeth in this plan. So it has evolved. To answer the question as far as Innovation District, just as it's been stated by David before, with the work share space as far as the technology involved there is some pretty intense fiber optic lines that access to the site. Trying to go ahead and really play up that this is a, we're going back to the past as far as the rail yard and the historic nature of it, but this is also the future. This is the next 100 years, next generations, and really trying to bring the technology piece to the entire site. Speaking of your question, we've looked at this way inside and out many times. Down Driver extending into Mather Street. It was thought of for a while to go ahead and do that. The reason why, in general, why it stopped right there is really trying to keep this a pedestrian-friendly area and focus on that. We want to discourage folks from actually going ahead and racing right down Driver and hitting the Mather. Be it people who just want to go ahead and bypass this whole area because Broadway might get congested a little bit at rush hour times, or truck traffic. We didn't want truck traffic to go, oh, this is a good spot to keep, to just cut on through, to just stick to the primary routes. So that's where we're at, but we're pretty proud of where this has come to, and it's been a long time coming, so thank you for your consideration.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Okay.
Motion to close the floor? Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I would move to approve the recommendation.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Commissioner Wisniewski?
I was going to say the same thing. Job well done, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and we've come a long ways.
It sure beats
from
Walmart.
the mess that we had before. Thank you very much.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I'll ask that you please vote.
Yeah, I did.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Next item, item 2, consideration and possible action on a request to authorize a conditional use permit to construct a detached garage beyond the maximum height requirements found in chapter 13-615, table 6-4, in a low-density residential district located at 3503 Nicolay Drive, submitted by David and Nicole Parrott, property owners.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request for a conditional use permit to construct a detached garage at 3503 Nicolay Drive. And that property is highlighted in red here. It's near the northern city limits. The bay is on the west side, Nicolay Drive here. Point Au Sable is just to the north, and Van Landen Road is just to the south. This is an area mainly of single-family homes and some farmland that's still kind of left on the east side of Nicolay. The area is zoned low-density residential. So it's comp plan calls for low-density residential housing, and the current zoning is low-density residential. The request is to construct that detached garage in this particular location here. It's about 65 feet off of Nicolay. The reason for the request is the height of the structure. The max height limitation is 16 feet in the R1 district. They're at about 17 feet, so they're actually about a foot off. And the sidewall heights are not supposed to exceed 10 feet, they're at about 13 feet, so that's the reason for the request. Previously on the aerial, you saw this was vacant. This home was built in, I think, about 2017. It's about a single story, maybe a story and a half structure. And of course, this structure is about a story in height. This is an elevation of the proposed structure. You can see it's about 17 feet here to the midpoint of the roof line. We don't measure to the peak, but we measure to the midpoint of the roof line. One other point is that there is a floodplain that runs through this property, kind of cuts north and south through here. The existing home is within the floodplain and had to be constructed floodplain standards. The garage is out, however, so they do not have to meet floodplain standards. The applicants were also at the Board of Appeals recently for the placement of the structure, and they were granted a variance for the placement of the structure in front of the principal structure. And the case here is, on the bayfront property, a lot of times they're considered double frontage. You've got frontage on Nicolay and on the bay side. So they received a variance for the placement of that garage as well. We notified affected property owners, all the persons in the district. We haven't received any comments or questions regarding this. And we are recommending approval of this item with 2 conditions. The standard condition under A is for the site plan approval, and item B is the continuation of the architectural style and coloring that goes along with the existing structure. And the applicants are here tonight as well.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yeah.
We have someone in the audience.
Yeah, we have applicants here too, so.
Move to open the floor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to open the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All I wanted to say was I'm in favor of this. I'm fully supportive of it, and I just wanted to let you know that. That's all I needed to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak on this?
We're the property owners. I can certainly answer any questions if you have any here.
Doesn't seem to be any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to return to regular order of business.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to return to regular order of business. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're back. Commissioner Wispiski.
You can call me Alderman, you say, what's the
Oh, that was-
Of course, that's what the mayor said.
Yeah.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask that you cast your vote.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Thank you. Next item, number 3. Consideration with possible action on the request to vacate a portion of Donald Driver Way and to close a portion of Kellogg Street to the public, submitted by Mullen Associates.
Thank you. This is a bit of a follow-up action from Dave's application with the rail yard as well. Though this does affect the southern portion of this. So again, the rail yard that you just approved was on this portion. This is a little bit more southern. So there are 2 separate requests with this. This is technically part of Donald Driver Way, this right-of-way area here. And then also Kellogg does extend this area here, though it's developed right now as a parking lot, so you can't really tell that it's right-of-way. So these both originally came in as vacation requests. We are going to be requesting approval of the Donald Driver portion, which is here. That will be dependent, though, on a final design of the roadway, which hasn't been completed by DPW. Once that is, if that does line up with this vacation request, those will go through together. It looks like those will go through at the same time, that they'll be the same area, but just in case you see this again, that's why, because the road design has then changed. The portion of Kellogg that was requested for vacation, we recommended that they would do a closure instead. We tend not to allow anything that leads either to a new facility or to the waterway to be vacated. We like to retain those properties just in case there's ever the opportunity then to cross the rail, to cross the river. We like to keep those options open. So the applicant was okay with that, so they will have to do a closure agreement with DPW to determine what kind of amenities can be in there and the type of maintenance agreement we'll have. So overall, we're looking at this small sliver of Donald Driver Way to be vacated. The rest of it would be retained and then extended as the roadway. And then this portion of it would then be closed with a closure agreement on it, that they would, I think, be developing some sort of a parking area over for the foreseeable future. So with that, we are recommending approval of the request. The first 2 conditions were part of your staff report that was mailed out. The third one was added today from our Department of Public Works that just says that it has to line up with the final design roadway once approved. So again, if the roadway design changes, they'll be back again with the request for the actual area, but it should be very close to what you're seeing here.
Any further discussion? No? Is there anybody wishing to speak on this? No? Okay. The chair will entertain a motion.
To approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask that you cast your vote.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Next item, consideration with possible action on appointments to the Military Business Improvement District as nominated by the BID and approved by Mayor Schmidt.
Thank you. So as you may or may not be aware, all bid appointments do have to go through the Plan Commission. So we do have 2 that are available for the military bid. Their applications and resumes were included in your packet, so if you have background information on them. Leah from the military bid is here if you have any questions regarding those applications, but we typically get these from our economic development staff as well as the mayor's office just to do the approval process.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes.
Just one
Commissioner
question. Are either of the appointees here that you would like to introduce them?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We typically don't have it. I think they come to city council, maybe.
Just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure we didn't ignore.
No, I don't think we're ignoring anybody today.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask that you cast your vote.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Director's report.
Doctor is not here, so you'll get a report in September.
Thank you. Which leads us to the date of the next meeting, being September 10th. 2018.
We don't have anything active right now as staff, but I guess we play it by ear.
I have faith in you.
We'll keep you updated on that.
We do have one item.
You do?
The zoning over on West Mason.
Oh, you didn't receive it. Okay, all right.
Oh, that could be a really short meeting.
Let's cover it right
For
now.
another record.
Well, if I don't speak, it'll be super short.
Let's cover it right now.
Motion
Kenny
to
Matt's
adjourn?
story.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
David?